And this will be your second one. And Mr. Long, that means you are good to go. Have a good meeting.
Thank you, Seth. All right, good evening, everybody. I'd like to call the January 24th, 2022 Scituate School Committee meeting to order. This meeting will be recorded and made available through Zoom. It will also be on Facebook Live. If people have any questions or comments after the meeting, they can email me at mlong@cit.org. I'm going to call the meeting to order by roll call vote. So Long, yes. Ms. Lindblom?
Yes.
Ms. Brandolini?
Yes.
Mr. Gates?
Yes.
And Dr. Borkowski?
Yes.
So the first item we have on the agenda tonight is celebrating student learning for the Jenkins Elementary School. So this time I'll turn it over to Principal Long.
Thank you. We are excited to be sharing about our win blocks. I have presenting with me tonight Ms. Lydia St. Ange, one of our reading specialists, Ms. Heather McNamara, another reading specialist, and Deb McHugh is our math specialist. So without further ado, I will let them take it away.
Good evening, everybody. I am Lydia St. Ange. I will be sharing our presentation just a moment so that we can tell you all about our win blocks at Jenkins. So the What I Need win block in math and reading is what makes up the vast majority of the day for me and Heather and Deb, and we are going to share a little bit about what we do and what the kids get out of it each day. But before we do that, we want you to all be able to meet your specialists. So we have Debbie, do you want to unmute and say hello first?
I'm Debbie McHugh. I work at Jenkins Elementary School. I'm the math specialist.
And then as pictured in the middle, I'm Lydia. I am one of the reading specialists. Heather?
Heather, you should be able to unmute yourself. Heather, are you there? If not, I'll ask you to.
There you go. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'm Heather McNamara. I'm the other reading specialist, and we're so excited to tell you about our WIN program.
All right, so what is WIN? WIN stands for the What I Need model. WIN is a 30-minute block built into the daily schedule of each grade level. It's just a chance to really put into practice the fact that we are committed to helping each child learn, grow, and enjoy success as students. And when I say we, I mean really the whole school community, the specialists, the classroom teachers, the paras, we're all kind of all hands on deck to help make sure that every individual is getting what they need. It's utilized, this time is utilized to target and strengthen student skills. This one's you, Heather.
Yep, I got it. So in order to form our groups, we give benchmark assessments at the beginning, middle, and end of the school year. Every student is assessed, and after we collect the data and graph it and analyze it, we meet as grade level teams and discuss every single student. And we that's how we form our win blocks. We look at what the students need, and then we sort of assign groups and decide how that time will be spent.
So this intervention looks a little bit different in reading and math. For reading, we of course have two specialists, so we can take two groups at a time. We have 30-minute small group targeted intervention. We have groups of 2 to 5 students, depending on age level and the area that we're targeting. We follow the Foundations curriculum in K through 2, and then expand upon that and focus on fluency and comprehension in 3, 4, 5. Our goal that we usually meet is to progress monitor every 2 weeks so that we're keeping track and gathering data on all of the kids that we're working with. And the intervention periods are about 6 to 8 weeks. Of course, with different vacations and snow days and nor'easters, we need a little flexibility, so the range varies a little bit. In math, Debbie is able to take groups of about 4 to 8 kids for 30-minute small group targeted intervention. She follows the Eureka math curriculum. Progress monitoring is done about every 3 weeks. And again, it's that 6 to 8 week intervention period. So we have just a few visuals of all of the cuties who we get to work with. This first picture shows grade 1 students practicing sentence dictation. And so this is a really exciting kind of new part of our year with the foundations curriculum that is being taught in the classroom as tier 1 instruction in K through 2 classrooms. And then during our intervention time, during the WIN block, we get to really circle back and reiterate and solidify those foundational literacy skills. And as you can see, these 2 first graders are just rocking. They are able to mark up sentences. They're working on their spelling. They're capitalizing. They are really showing off so many skills that they've been picking up since the beginning of this school year. And then Debbie, do you want to describe what you're doing with the 3rd graders in the other picture?
Sure. A couple of years ago, the PTO had provided the whole district with some money, and we had Greg Tang. I don't know if anyone remembers that. So the kids were playing Kukuma with me, Greg Tang, at the end of one of their intervention blocks. It's a really great, fun multiplication addition game.
Awesome. And then here we have some 3rd graders. Again, you'll see some of them marking up on the board. We work with nonsense words to make sure that the kids are learning the rules of phonics without being able to just know the word because it's a real word. So we had 2 teams tagging in and tagging out to break down these 2 nonsense words and to help each other out to make sure they could identify syllable type, how to pronounce the vowel in those syllables, and then how to read the whole word. So kind of like fun, healthy competition to get our phonics skills up to snuff.
So here are 2 2nd grade girls that have been working really hard during WIN block to improve their phonics skills. And this is a little snippet of a lesson that I did with them. Going to write is checked. Can you say it? Yeah. What is the base word of checked? Yeah. Good. Let's tap out check. Check. Checked. I checked the box. Go ahead and try and write the word checked.
Ms. St. Is this supposed to be sound with us?
Yes, there is. You'd think I hadn't taught fully remote for a year and forgot to share my sound. Just a moment. More. Okay, take 2. Here we go.
We're going to practice writing words with suffixes. The word we're going to write is checked. Can you say it?
Checked.
What is the base word of checked?
Check.
Good. Let's tap out check. Check. Checked. I checked the box. Go ahead and try and write the word checked. Already done? Turn around. All right, so Viv, why did you write, okay, good. Vivian, why did you underline the CH and the CK? What do we call those?
Because those are both digraphs.
Good job. And Nola, why did you circle ED?
Because it's a suffix.
It's a suffix. And what did you put over your ED, Vivian?
I put a /T/T.
Why?
Because ED can make 3 different sounds, and one of them is T.
Good job, the T sound. And Nola, lastly, why did you put a C below the word check?
Because the E is closed off by the C.
CK, and it makes a what kind of syllable? What do we call that?
Closed.
Closed syllable, which is what the C stands for. Great job, girls. Thank you. We're going to practice writing words with suffixes.
So here are a couple 5th grade students that we've had in WIN over several years. They've made a ton of progress. We have all worked with them. We love working with them. Sometimes we don't want them to graduate out of our program because we grow so attached to them, but this is just a little statement they're making about WIN and their experiences.
I like reading IA is because it helps me a lot because I used to not read, but I've definitely, over the years, I've definitely improved because Mrs. St. Audrey and Mrs. McNamara has corrected me and has definitely helped me improve and gets books I like to read.
Hi, my name is Faith. I love Math IA because math is one of my favorite subjects and it's always been tough for me to do it. So Mrs. McHugh also helps me with that. She helps me improve in my work and she helps me understand it too. So the reason I like going to her is because she's like one of the best math teachers in the school and she also helps students who need help in their math, like maybe maths and extra math or just math in general.
Thank you.
Another thing that we've had an opportunity to really increase this year is making sure that we are truly getting each student what they need. So whether it's intervention in small groups with Deb and Heather and myself, or kind of reiterating that tier 1 instruction that's happening in the classroom, which then becomes a small group because kids are being pulled out so classroom teachers can work with their own students. We also have developed reading acceleration book groups at Jenkins this year, which are happening in grades 1 through 5. And we have a little example of a 2nd grade book group that meets during the WIN block. I actually love this picture just because it really shows that kids get comfortable. You know, someone's like standing on the baseboard, another kid was kind of in a little like inversion, and kids have their shoes off. They are just Kim Nigro, who's one of the paraprofessionals at Jenkins, runs this group, and she always gets a little app on her phone out and spins the wheel. It's like Wheel of Fortune to decide who gets to read next, and the kids are so excited about it. And we're just really able to explore a lot of literature that we don't always get to, you know, in reading groups in the class or in read aloud. So you can see just a few examples of some of the books that have been read by book groups. And these are groups of 6 to 10 kids, but meet Yasmin, The Year of Billy Miller, The World According to Humphrey, Magician's Elephant, and Tiger Rising, which are actually both Kate DiCamillo and the kids in 5th grade read both and then compared and talked about how how they could tell it was the same author, but which one they preferred. So that was a cool discussion. Fuzzy Mud, Percy Jackson, Mixed Up Files of Mrs. Baisley Frankweiler, Boy Called Bat, Zelda and Ivy. They're just having so much fun with it. And we do get to switch up these groups so that kids are feeling like they you know, get to do something a little special and a little different during that WIN block time.
So when one of the ways that we look at progress and make sure students are getting the instruction they need is we use Dibble's progress monitoring. And this graph helps us because we look at the aim line, which is that dotted line, And then there's it's connected from the beginning benchmark to where they're expected to be at the end of the school year. And you can see on the graph the dots. The dots are their data points. And when they're on or above the aim line, they're green. And so if we know that we're doing a good job in making the kids getting stronger with their skills, if the kids are on or above their aim line, and if they're below, then we make changes in our instruction so that we're hitting the skills that we need to.
So these are two of the student tracking programs that we use for math. The top one is the Universal Screener for Number Sense by Forefront Education. This is new this year. This provides information for number sense and some fluency. This is great because without fluency and number sense, it makes it really hard for students to be successful with their grade level skills. The bottom program is Symphony Math. We've had this for several years. This provides information on growth scores for students, class, and the entire school. We do this assessment 3 times a year, and this helps us with WIN and trying to figure out where we're going to place students in our WIN groups.
So if anyone has any questions, we're happy to answer them. And we just really thank you for inviting us to join you today. It's really a pleasure to share what we love to do and we get to do all day long with kids in grades K through 5 at Jenkins.
And thank you for coming, because it's a great insight into some of the work that's being done in our schools on a regular basis. So being able to see it as opposed to just hearing it is definitely a great thing. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Are there any, sorry, before you go, is there any questions from anyone in the committee?
Yeah, I had a quick one, Mr. Long, if that's okay. So I agree. Thank you for coming tonight. I was just curious, in an early slide, you had a comparison of the size of the groups and the sort of frequency of evaluation. And there's some differences between reading and math. I'm just wondering if you could speak a little bit to what's the, why the smaller groups with reading versus math? And it looked like you were more frequently evaluating, if I remember correctly, in the reading side versus math. So could you just talk to those differences a little bit?
So I'm Debbie, I'm the math specialist, Debbie McHugh. So at one point we did have 2 math specialists. We only have 1 math specialist. So collecting data takes a lot of time. I'd rather work with the students than collect data as much, although I feel the data is really important. I do have a para that helps me when my groups are really large, but when the students need services, it's just so hard to not allow one in, and it's just such a fine line on where you make the cut, or who can come into your group and who can't. So we try not to turn anyone down and do the best we can. And we're really creative on our groupings. And so it's a little more difficult with math, but we all work together and, we do the best we can do.
Yeah, so I just wanted to clarify that it sounds like it's a matter of resources, not sort of pedagogy and sort of math needs versus reading needs. I just wanted to understand that.
Yes.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
I have a couple questions too, Mike. So I guess this sort of kind of piggybacks off Carrie's question. So with COVID and all that, the goings on, and kids and people being sick, have you been able to meet those assessment points? So I know you said 3 times a year. Have you been able to do that this year?
So math, we're on our second winter benchmarks right now with math, and there has been a lot of growth. So especially with fluency, there's been a lot of growth, yes, which I was so happy. We were all so happy about. So to answer your question, yes.
Well, I would say that that's impressive, because I know that some districts have not been able to complete or haven't had, for all the reasons, people being sick, being the #1 reason, get through those kind of mid-year or you know, 1/3 of the way through assessments yet. So I think that's, you know, certainly kudos to your team for getting that done. And then my second question, oh, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. We do have some students that still need
Right.
more intervention.
Yep.
So, you know, we look at the students individually. You know, I'm looking at just my core group of students that I've been working with. And then we have the classroom and then the whole school performance. So we can look at it, you know, in several different ways.
Can
Yeah,
I
the point about
on
meeting
it
with students is your
for
main
reading?
goal. Oh yeah, go ahead, sorry.
I'm sorry. I just wanted to say that, yeah, we kept to our assessment schedule, and we're really pleased with the progress that the kids are making. It's really amazing how, well, we do have our new our phonics program, which is helping tremendously. And we're seeing a ton of growth with that. And it's everybody is really pulling together to sort of meet the kids where they're at every level and sort of continue forward. So, I mean, we're really encouraged. So I just wanted to say that.
Yeah, I just think it's a huge feat because just knowing, you know, how difficult it is when you're making progress and then a few members of your group are gone for like a week or, you know, however much. And then you have one come in and then one goes back out and you're trying to work with the group and have cohesion and, you know, so it's certainly a tough year. So I think that's fantastic that you've been able to make such progress with the kids. That's awesome. I guess I just had one more question. Are all of these elements and the WIN blocks being used at all 4 elementaries, or are there, I know everybody's doing dibbles and all that kind of stuff, but are you all piloting any portion of this, or is this universally sort of being implemented, like the new parts you mentioned, like the universal screener and all that, or is this uniform, or is this like, you know, pieces?
This, if I can speak to that, I can have Megan Gregory as well. She's here. The math specialists and reading specialists all work collaboratively with Heather Allen and Megan and work to be consistent with the windows and the assessments that we're using. So they really do a lot of work to really protect that time and decide on common assessments that can be used. That way we can look together across district and help each other that way as well. Megan, I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add or. Sorry, she might not be able to unmute.
Oh, sorry.
That's the gist of it though. And they are working together. Megan, Gregory, and Heather Allen do work with the reading math specialists, and they meet to also talk vertically across the district. So this isn't a silo effort, which is awesome. It's something that is shared among the 4 elementary schools. We are working to make it even more consistent, but the practices, the name, the assessments are set in place consistently.
That's great. Oh, there's Megan.
I can unmute now. Yeah, just to reiterate what Rebecca said, yes, we are giving the same assessments across all 4 schools. All 4 schools are using the WIN model to make sure that all the kids, wherever their data points are getting what they need to make sure that they can move forward in their literacy and math development.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, thank you again for presenting tonight. That was a great presentation, very insightful.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
So next in the agenda, we have the student advisors report with Ms. Reese and Mr. Kinsley.
Hi, everyone. Alrighty, first on the agenda, the debate team attended their 2nd virtual meet of the year. Scituate teams went 5-1. Great job from the debate squad. The robotics team has been very thankful for Sylvian Dumais, whose mentoring and leadership have been and will continue to be instrumental in the successful learning happening as the team embarks on the competition challenge this season. They are currently studying the challenge and competition rules to design a robot successfully. Journalism students conducted a press conference with Daryl David, the interim METCO director, on Friday, January 14th. Members of the Situation staff are also busy preparing a surprise feature article that will be published on January 26th to celebrate the 30th birthday of a highly regarded high school teacher. Members of the SPS community are encouraged by the Situation team to check out situation.net to learn about what's happening at SHS. Alrighty, on to Johnny.
Thank you. So Allies Not Bystanders has been preparing to reinstitute anti-bullying facilitations to 10th and 11th graders whose experiences of these facilitations were interrupted by COVID. They are also beginning the process of conducting a shortened version of the presentation for SHS staff as a reminder of the importance of the work they do in the school. Students this week have mid-year experiences, which may range from a project to an exam, or some type of culminating activity to apply what we've learned so far, or expand upon an idea in greater depth. Semester 2 starts on Monday. And then the girls basketball team has climbed
John, I think you're cutting out.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay, all right. Where did I cut out?
I think you said girls basketball and then you cut out.
Okay. Girls basketball has climbed its way back to over 500 on the season with a great win over Hanover. And boys basketball has a game tomorrow night against Plymouth North, Friday night against North Quincy, and Sunday against Marshfield at TD Garden, which we are all selling tickets for. Each of the varsity players got 10 tickets to sell. And then a big shout out to the math team who won their last math meet. So thank you for having us today, and that's it.
Okay, thank you both. Any questions from anyone on the committee? All right, well, thank you both for that update. At this time, we are going to take one item out of order. So I got a request to move Dr. Dutch's business and finance leadership report up. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to him for his report.
Thank you. I'd like to share my screen. I can. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I've been asked to provide you with an update on where we are in the Hatherley MSBA Hatherley Cushing project. So I'd like to do that. As you know, the first phase or module 1 is the eligibility period, which is what we are in. This graphic that you see here kind of puts everything on one page for you. And I'm going to go through that fairly quickly. Some of this is a repetition from previous, but we've got some specific dates and information that I want to include. So as you know, the eligibility period is 270 days. So for us, it ends on March 28th. The first phase of that is the initial compliance certification, which was due 30 days after we began. We completed that on July 19th. And I've been through this before, so I won't go into too much detail. The next is the formation of the school building committee. That has been formed and was completed well before the August 30th deadline. Then is the educational profile questionnaire, which asks a series of questions about educational programs in the elementary schools. So we provided that. It was due by September 30th. That was completed as most have been in advance. The enrollment certification is the last step. We participated in an enrollment meeting with the MSBA where they asked some questions, provided some data. We provided them some additional data, and now we're waiting for them to give us what they think the right size would be for the combined school. And then also due December 30th was the maintenance and capital planning, which gives an outline of our maintenance plan, as well as what the town does with the school district as it relates to capital planning. And we've submitted that as well. The last item that needs to occur is the authorization of funding. That was due by March 28th. Happy to say that it was passed the town meeting in the fall in October for an appropriation of $1.1 million for the feasibility study. So just to recap, these are the important dates. We've met all of these dates already. So we are just waiting for the enrollment certification, and then we will be ready for the next steps. So that's this is where we are at this point. We await the enrollment projection from MSBA. Once we agree with their size of the school, the superintendent will sign off on that. We would then receive an invitation from the MSBA Board of Directors to enter the feasibility study phase, which is module 2. Actually, it's module 4, but it kind of backtracks, and you'll see why in a moment. We would sign on to a feasibility study agreement. That agreement outlines how we would be reimbursed and how much we would be reimbursed for the different components within module 2, 3, and 4. And then finally, we would move into module 2, which is the next phase within the eligibility period. Module 2 is where we form the project team. The first component of that is the owner project manager. Acronym for that is OPM. And I'll talk a little bit more about that process on the next bubble. We also select the designer. That is, they are a member of the project team as well. And I'll speak to that process also. And then the district is required to have a certified procurement officer. The district is fortunate that we have, I think, 3 people in town who are certified as that. The town accountant, Nancy Holt, a town administrator, Jim Boudreau, and myself are all certified procurement officers. So we're able to be part of that project team. So the owner project manager, the process is that the district would form a selection committee for the owner project manager. That committee will be a subset, most likely, of the school building committee. And that would
Dr. Dutch, you still there?
I think he's frozen, Mr. Long.
Yeah. I know there's potential for internet issues on his end, which is why we had to move him up, but. Okay, why don't we do this? I think we.
Chairman Long?
Yep.
Dr. Dutch just texted me that, and again, that's why we moved him up. Eversource contacted him saying that they'd be doing some work in his neighborhood, that he might go in and out of power. So he is out of power right now. So when he gets back on, he'll do his best to do so, to finish his presentation.
Okay, if not, if for whatever reason he can't come back, we'll just continue at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. So in that case, what we'll do is we'll go back to the original order of the agenda, which first up in old business is the Scituate High School Program of Studies. So in our last meeting, we went through the Program of Studies and went through the executive summary that Ms. Rundle and the department chairs and Dr. McGuire went through. So I don't know if there are any questions from the committee for anyone who presented last time. If not, we can move forward with a vote on that item. Okay, seeing no questions, I will entertain a motion on the high school program of studies.
I'll make a motion that the school committee approve the Scituate High School Program of Studies for 2022-2023 as presented last meeting.
I'll second.
Thank you. So do a roll call vote. Mr. Gates,
Yes.
Ms. Lindblom,
Yes.
Long, yes. Dr. Burkowski,
Yes.
and Ms. Brandolini.
Yes.
Thank you. So moving on, we'll go on to the Assistant Athletic Director job description. It's the same deal. Are there any questions from the committee from anything that was discussed in our last meeting? If not, I will entertain a motion on that agenda item.
I'll make a motion that the Scituate School Committee approve the Assistant Athletic Director job as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you. Do a roll call vote again. Mr. Gates,
Yes. Yes.
Ms. Lindblom,
Yes.
Dr. Burkowski,
Yes.
Ms. Brandolini,
Yes.
and Long, yes. And the last item we had was in old business was the Scituate substitute teacher pay scale. So any questions on that item?
Chairman Long, may I bring up a slight addendum to that presentation?
Yeah. Yep.
There was some questions last meeting about whether the pay increase met minimum wage requirements, and they all did. However, we took another deeper look into that, including the equity, in the paying of the teachers and paraprofessionals, custodians, and bus drivers, and it was a little off still. Also, we wanted to pride ourselves on being up near the top of the pack and not the middle. So we did make a slight adjustment in the substitute teacher pay scale from $100 to $110. So again, same questions to be answered for that. Yes, we can afford it in our budget. It will attract more folks going from the 90 to 110, obviously, and it will bring that up comfortably over the minimum wage, which obviously is a concern. We shouldn't be competing at that low rate. So we don't want to come back to you in a year and bump it up another $10. So we moved it from, for full transparency, from last meeting from 100 to 110. Again, for all those reasons, we think it's a smart move at this time, and we can afford to budget that, and our substitutes are well worth it.
Great. No, that's great to hear that we took that back and reviewed it. So thank you for that update, Superintendent Burkhead. Other than that update, were there any questions from the committee? If not, I will entertain a motion on the amended substitute teacher pay scale.
I can make a.
Oh, go ahead, Peter.
Make a motion.
It's so hard on Zoom.
I know. I'll make a motion to approve the revised substitute pay scale schedule as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Long, yes. Ms. Brandolini,
Yes.
Dr. Burkowski,
Yes.
Ms. Lindblom,
Yes.
and Mr. Gates.
Yes.
All right, thank you all. That was easy and painless. So moving back into the leadership reports. So first we'll start with the superintendent's leadership report.
Thank you, Chairman Long, and good evening, everyone. Recently, we sent out a correspondence regarding our testing programming at in the school district, and I just wanted to kind of make sure that I slowed down and was able to articulate that tonight through a presentation. As we know, during COVID, things change very rapidly, especially when we have directives from DESE, and they're typically on short notice. So I want to thank all of our team for being able to turn that information over in quick time, to be able to look at it and see how it impacts our district, and then get it communicated to our school community. So I'm going to share my screen now just to kind of review that with everybody, so we're all on the same page and answer any questions you may have. Can you see that screen, Chairman Long? Okay.
Yes, we can.
Thank you. All right, so move some things around. Oops. So the DESE New Testing Initiative came to us, and these are some highlights and key points from that. And, you know, summarizing each of the bullets here, DESE combined with the Mass DPH and found through their research that the transmission from close contacts was very low. And the second bullet gets in a little more detail about that, about the collecting data from the Mass schools and other CDC data collected nationwide. And they put some numbers down there in the last sentence. It talks about per DESE as of January 9th. The amount of tests were 496,440 and 98.6% were negative on the close contacts. So they're making the case that the time and energy for focusing on close contacts at this time may be better served using symptomatic testing instead. And that's where this is going. So DESE recommended at that time to shift testing focus from the test and stay program, which also is putting a strain on our resources, our school nurses, our principals and staff, and the contact tracing that went with it, to move to a weekly rapid antigen at home self-test. Get into a little bit on how that works. So as I said, the focus shift from identifying students and staff with symptoms versus close contacts. And so this is available to all students and staff. It's an opt-in process, so it's not mandated. And I'll get into how we handle students that may get symptomatic at school in a little bit, but it is an opt-in, and right away we sent information out as we had a deadline, and our staff had a really overwhelmingly positive response on staff taking advantage of that. And we'll have an opportunity also for staff that didn't opt in right now to opt in later date. This was also approved unanimously by our medical advisory committee, including both doctors. So how does this impact our district? So symptomatic testing will remain in place for staff and students that develop symptoms while in school. And I think that was a big point for us, and that's up to us. That wasn't you know, a DESE requirement or request. I just think that's best practice for us. For example, you know, people will get the test to take home. They'll have them at home. If they're feeling symptomatic, they can take the tests and then be able to kind of report that to the school district. However, we may have a situation where someone gets sick during the school day, a staff or a student. And so now we're able to test them in the school as well. So we kind of have another layer of protections for those, and that's whether you're vaccinated or not. If you have symptoms during school, we'll be able to test them. And our nurses and staff won't be as stressed with the test and stay and close contacting. Will be able to do that more regularly for that population in our school district. And an obvious second bullet here is that if you're not, if you have symptoms, you are asked to stay home. It goes for everybody. And our school nurses will continue to collaborate with our school, with the Scituate Board of Health. Our MAC talks daily. We talk daily with the Board of Health as well. So there's constant contact and communication on how things are going, and looking at our town rates as well. So that's something that won't change. And so we have the ability to contact, trace, and test on a case-by-case basis, case-by-case, if we see the situation warrants it. So if we have an obvious close contact and we think there's for example, a smaller class that's been, that has to be in close contact for a certain event or activity, and we believe that there's a possibility of spread in school, we'll certainly test and contact parents at home. So again, that flexibility best practice where we're going to use common sense to make sure that anytime there's a possibility of the spread of COVID, that we initiate some form of testing or contact tracing. So that's still in our toolbox. So we'll be pausing test and stay to align with this new data DESE has come out with to symptomatic and home testing. I'll share a timeline shortly with everyone to see how that goes. My initial letter did say that there'll be more information coming, so I'll highlight some of that in this presentation. So this week, cut to the chase here. This week, there'll be more detailed information coming out to families on that detailed rollout and how you can opt in for that. And the program, according to DESE, runs through April 22nd, and they're going to revisit it at that point by collecting data and information and feedback from schools. So just some logistical things to consider. How this will be distributed, not what it looks like. So we'll set a date, let's say Friday. There'll be a process at each school for students and staff to pick up 2 tests bi-weekly. So it'll equal out to 1 a week, and we'll do that twice a week, and we'll inform students and staff how that looks. We're working on that now. That'll be in the details of the rollout. And we'll ask that students and staff to test each Monday morning prior to coming to school. Some prevention there. And positive results, as they have been, will be reported using contact form and Aspen on the announcement page. And again, this detail here will be sent out to families so they all know how to do that and contact us. When in doubt, you contact your school or your school nurse as well. But we'll have a page to do that so it's user-friendly for families. So here's a sample timeline. And again, some of this, and I'll point this out in the presentation, some of this relies on DESE. And if you recall the mask issue we had, we want to make sure that everyone knows that this is our plan. But some of this, depending on when the tests arrive, rely on DESE. So DESE announced this initiative on the 18th of January. We had to have opt-in numbers to them 2 days later, which we did. And I want to thank our staff for responding in a quick and timely manner on that. So on the 21st, we had to commit to the program. We were approved the next day on the 22nd. So everyone can see it. It's a 4-day turnaround for all these things happening. We kind of had to drop everything and get this done. So again, compliments to our team and to our community for being able to absorb that. And again, I'll repeat this. So families will receive this information, the opt-in forms this week with some more explanation. And according to DESE, the test kits for staff will arrive this week and the student test kits will arrive next week. Ideally, if that happens, the staff testing would begin the morning of the 31st and the student testing would begin on February 7th. And we'll share this in our correspondence, but I wanted to kind of articulate that this evening. If all goes well with our shipments of tests coming in, that will be the rollout and transition from our current testing state to the new symptomatic testing program. Before I get into this, I'm going to pause there because the next slide is a little bit different, goes off this topic. So I'll pause there and answer. I've also, I think Nurse Leader Roach is here tonight to help me with any questions you may have.
Okay. Are there any questions so far from the committee?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. So students, once everybody gets these tests, we're expected to test every Monday regardless of whether or not we're symptomatic. Is that correct?
Ideally, yes.
Okay. I just wanted clarification.
Yeah,
that's all.
thank you. It's a great question. Yeah, and the answer is ideally yes. If we can't control it, but that's why we give 2 weeks, so you do have enough to do that weekly.
Okay. And I guess that was my question. Because I think I've signed up for the federal tests, getting those, and
yeah,
hopefully the ones from DESE will come in without any glitches like the last time.
And I think the point they're making, and I think the example we have is that when we had tests for our staff on New Year's weekend there, we caught like 6 or 7, I believe, and some were asymptomatic. So I think the whole concept there is that there are folks out there that do not have symptoms, and that's the whole concept, that we can catch those by testing weekly and providing those tests. So that's the ideal situation for our district.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I just had
one.
Sorry, one question. Superintendent Perka, do you know if families opt in, will they need to report a negative test, or will just a negative result just, or not responding default to meaning that they have a negative test result?
Just the positive test results will be reported, just to kind of cut back on the amount of work people have to do on that. We'll assume that if you're negative, you're fine to come into school. If you're not, you're positive. That's really what we have to keep track of.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Superintendent Burkhead, you talked about, obviously we're at the mercy of DESE handing out the test. Do they have any commitment to make sure that they're going to meet the need from different towns, or, are they is it kind of up in the air in terms of whether we get the number of tests that we need or on a regular basis?
This time around, they were very confident that they had plenty of tests. So again, I can just go from what the commissioner has told us, that he's confident that we'll all get the tests we need. So I have his word. I don't know. I don't have any other proof beside that.
Yeah, that's, I was just curious if, we commit to doing 50% of what you want or 100%, you know what I mean? Just so families are aware that, some weeks they might not get the test, or we might get it on the off week when we were expecting it.
Yeah, we'll just have to, if that happens, what we'll have to do is just communicate that right out to families and get that information out as soon as we receive it. I think the whole concept is to get tests a week in advance so that you have time. If you don't get your tests, for some reason there is a snag, that they're allowing a week between shipments so that, even if they're late, we can still get them in before we disseminate them to the community. And if that doesn't look good, we still have a few days to allow the community to know that there may be a glitch in receiving the test, which I hope does not happen.
Yeah, me either. But okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mike, I just have one follow-up question for Bill. Is there a reason why we're opting to test on Monday? You're expecting families to do this on a Monday morning and not like a Sunday night?
I think the staff would begin. That's the first time. I don't know. Kelly, is there maybe Ms. Roach can help me answer that question? Did you have to unmute her, Mr. Long?
Yeah, I can do that right now.
Thank you.
I mean, I'm just thinking of like the logistics of families trying to get their kids to school, but you have to wait, as somebody who is familiar with the tests, like trying to administer the test, there's the 15-minute window,
Yeah, it's 15 minutes. So we ask, we want the most recent data we have. So we figure before we come to school Monday would be a good time, because then if people are positive, that's, you look 2 days back for the infectious period, and that would mean that kids weren't in school. So we thought that, going from suggestions from DESE and other districts, that Monday morning might be the best thing to do. And if we get feedback that that's not working for people, we can certainly, look at Sunday nights. But we figured that would be the best way to unroll this time.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions, or should I move on?
I don't have any questions, but I just wanted to make a comment that I think this is a huge win just for, our nursing staff, and how incredibly taxing this is, and just pretty much school resources in general and staffing. I've seen it firsthand. Like, it's like, it's going to be, I think children are going to be better served with the usual, instances that they're going to the nurses, and not that those needs haven't been being met, but just the enormous juggling and how huge the plate of nurses has been, that, I think they deserve a break for sure. And that I love that Scituate is committing to the symptomatic testing for staff and students in school, because I think that's a big, even for parents and caregivers, it's like, okay, you have a fever, you're not just left to your own devices to go then, find a test or whatever it is, if it's midweek. So I think, I think this is a really good, positive hopefully forward step in all of this, you know, especially for our nursing staff.
I agree, and I'm glad you brought that up. I mean, I wrote this in a recent Thursday Thoughts, that I see heroic deeds done every day, and you know, this is I consider our staff, all of our staff, frontline workers, and custodians, teachers, paraprofessionals, cafeteria, bus administrators, all of us. We are working during a pandemic in close quarters with children and other adults. And so I'm extremely proud of the fact that we've been able to do this and keep our kids in school. And you saw the example earlier today from the Jenkins team about, you know, learning is still happening and improvements are happening across the district. So we're really excited about that. And we do that by keeping the kids in school and keeping everyone safe. So, you know, I highly commend our nurses too. I think they've had it the toughest with a lot of what they've had to deal with, not only on just the physical, practical demands of the test and stay program and the close contacts, but all the communications they have to make with, you know, parents don't necessarily, we took it a step higher and our nurses wanted to do this and they did it very well. Some school districts just sent emails when there was a positive or close contact. Our nurse team, along with the help of their principals at the elementary and assistants from administrators in the secondary also, made the point to contact parents because it is a serious issue and concerning to folks, and we wanted to take that extra step. So great point, and this will be a relief to them, we're hoping as well. Okay, the last slide, well, you know, so we're not spending all our time on COVID, but it's certainly necessary to talk about that elephant in the room. Just wanted to mark your calendars, folks out there, that you know, are to refocus and continue our focus on the pillars of, you know, excellence and collaboration, and through that, creating a home away from home through communication is one of the best ways to do that. So I think the first superintendent Seaside chats went very well. It was good to see people in person having conversations about the MSBA project. This Seaside chat will be coming up in a few weeks, and it'll be Thursday, February 10th. There'll be 2 opportunities. It'll be in person at the Senior Center, one at 1:30 and the other at 6:30 p.m. on February 10th. So we'll have those. We'll have these flyers out there so people know, but I wanted to highlight it tonight as well. And these are just this one's just kind of an open forum where it's conversations about anything you want to talk about in education in our district. So hopefully folks can make it. If you can't, I'm always available. I know our leadership team and principals have made themselves available to have conversations outside of this meeting. And I know they're doing it individually at their buildings as well. So again, to keep that in-person conversation going about our school district, we'll be doing that soon. And then next meeting on February 7th, I'll be presenting a summary of where we are. It's about the mid-year point for school. And I wanted to just give a summary on all the things academics and academically and focus on our goals and our pillars and how we're doing with our achievements so far to date. And so that'll be our next meeting. And then we've got some other important meetings for the community to know about. And again, our budget is in high gear right now. We've been working hard. It starts over the summer. And it's our opportunity on the 12th of February at 9 a.m. It'll be a school committee budget workshop. We will share a first glance to the community on where we are with that. And our vision of our budget is reflected in our values. So we'll be looking to share that with folks, get a feel where the community's at, and be transparent with our money and be good stewards of the town's money that we're allotted. And then the school committee budget hearing will be on the 17th. Note that that's a Thursday. It's a one agenda item, I believe, at this point, just focusing on the budget. We thought it was that important that it should be on a separate meeting. So that's why it's on a Thursday. So just wanted to put that on people's radar and on their calendars. Some excellent things coming up with a lot of good information. That's my report tonight. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Superintendent Burkett. Are there any other questions from the committee for the superintendent?
I just have a question, Mike, and it's actually in reference to Bob's presentation. because I was going to ask at the end of that, but I don't know if I'll have that chance. I know with the last MSBA project, there was a tab on the school website, the SPS website. Will we be doing that for this one as well?
Yes.
Okay.
And I actually have a note on that tonight to make sure we're working on that, so we'll get that up and running. I
Okay.
think we have enough information now to get that up and running. And I got a text from Bob. I don't know how old it is, but it was a minute ago. He's back on. I don't know if you want him to continue. Mr. Long, if he's able to do so.
Yeah, if he's back and we're all set.
Thank you, Ms. Lindblom. I think that's it's a great idea and something we are working on. We'll have it up on the website.
Mr. Dutch is a co-host again. Dr. Dutch, you can unmute yourself if you wish.
Okay, thanks. Power's back. I paid the bill. I promise. They had warned that may happen, which is why we moved it up originally. It's just a little sooner than they anticipated. So I'll share my screen again and continue from where I had left off. So the process as it relates to the OPM, we would form the OPM selection committee, prepare a request for services. What's unique about this is it's qualification based. We're not asking for any price information. The OPM selection committee would then evaluate the applicants based on criteria that we'll establish together. And then once we select the most qualified candidate, we would then negotiate their fee, which is a little different than most processes as it relates to procurement. I think I have, there we go. So the role of the OPM, they start with the feasibility study, and they provide project management guidance from the very beginning all the way to the end. So they're engaged in the entire process. From the design, engineering, they work within the scope of the work. They support us in cost estimating. They pre-qualify the general contractor and the subcontractors. They're responsible for scheduling and making sure that the contractor is on schedule. And then they oversee construction, negotiation with the designer and the general contractor throughout the entire project. So they're really, they're the right hand of the district in making sure that A, we're getting value, and B, everything is moving along in a timeline that's effective. The next component in Module 2 is the designer selection. This also, I didn't put any text here because it was a little hard to there's a lot to it, so I'll just kind of summarize it. The MSBA is responsible for the designer selection. There are designers, architects who are approved by the MSBA. They will ask for responses and to our project. They'll then evaluate the applicants and choose the top 3. We would then interview those 3, and we're expected to take their highest rated. And unless we identify a reason that we think they're not qualified, we would begin to negotiate with them on their price. If we can't come to an agreement, then we would go to the second highest rated, and so on all the way to the third highest rated. So while we have final say, a lot of it is MSBA determined and dictated by them. Module 3 is the feasibility study. So that's the actual study that will look at what our school will look like. And then the last piece is schematic design, where we would get a drawing that provides an overview. It's not a detailed architectural drawing, but it is an overview of the project, which at that point would then go back to the MSBA. We have until July of 2023 to get all of this completed. The selection should be pretty fast. It doesn't take very long once we get the request for proposals out. And after that, the feasibility study and the schematic design will take the longest, a little over a year, and get us to July 2023, at which point hopefully the MSBA would move us into the next phase, which would include funding for the whole project once they've determined what the total dollar amount would be for that project. So that's where we are at this point and what lies ahead in the next 18 months or so. Questions?
I have a question, Bob. Thank
Sure.
you for your beautiful presentation, as usual. You stated earlier that we're waiting for the enrollment certification from MSBA. Would they then kind of dictate the square footage of the school, the potential school?
They have input into that. Obviously, the enrollment will dictate to some degree the square footage. The components that might modify that square footage are how we teach, class size requirements that we may have, things that we want to incorporate into that school that they reimburse for. Obviously, there are auditoriums, for example, they don't reimburse for, swimming pools, and there's a long list of things they don't reimburse for. If those are things we want to put in the school, they're at our cost and not reimbursable. But there is a little bit of latitude, depending on the programming, instructional style. Gates is a perfect example. Because Gates has a lot of open classrooms, there aren't doors on any of the classrooms. They're all open structure. They've got the learning commons where the library, the way it's structured, is unique. So that probably increased the square footage that would normally have been a smaller footprint for that building. Similarly, you could have the same thing happen with the Hatherley Cushing project.
Thank you.
Yep.
And actually, I had a similar question to that, Dr. Dutt. So I'm totally making up numbers here, but could the MSBA come back and say, well, we're going to build a school for 500 students, but if we look at, combining the two schools, we're looking at potentially 600 coming in. Do we see a potential concern with how the MSBA comes back, or?
Well, I think the concern is that they have a formula, and what they do is they look at all the data that we provided, which was birth data, new housing, the types of developments that are being built, as well as who's moving in, moving out, sorts of things. They then look at what the enrollment capacities are at the Jenkins School and the Wampatuck School. They'll then take that total, subtract that from our projected enrollment for the next 10 years, and that difference will be what they'll project the size of the new school to be. So in reality, that school could be anywhere from 350 to 550 students, depending on what they're looking at for maximum capacity. And keep in mind, we use class sizes at the elementary level of 20. We have a couple that are 22. They use 23 as a minimum and go up as high as 28. So, they're aware that our preference historically has been 20 as a class size at the elementary level. Whether they give us that latitude or not, I'm not sure. So there's potential for a lot of variance in when we get that number from them. Which by the way should be by the end of this week.
Okay, and that was one of my concerns. They'll look at us and say, well, you're going to go from 4 to 3 elementary schools. You know, obviously we don't want to say as part of this, we have to redistrict just because of what the MSBA comes back with. So that's why I was just, and I'm not holding us to that. I'm just, that's why I was curious what they would potentially come back with.
Yeah, while ultimately it's a broader decision to redistrict, I think when you go from 4 schools to 3 schools, I don't think the MSBA envisions everybody at Cushing and Hatherley going into the new building. They're assuming that you're going to redistribute all of those students across 3 buildings. They don't care whether we have neighborhood schools or not. They're looking at the most efficient process because they're paying for a significant portion of it. And then it becomes our responsibility to figure out how to do that while maintaining the neighborhood feel.
Yep. Yeah, I know with the whole Gates project that came up a little bit because we're moving 6th grade to the middle school. So that's why I wanted to ask a question tonight, but okay, that helps. Thank you.
Sure.
I have a follow-up to that too. So Dr. Dutch, then would they then, and I think you had said this in previous meetings, but just wanted to clarify. So like you said, they don't care necessarily about what we, certain people prefer one, neighborhood school versus sort of like the grade levels together. So will they give a professional recommendation as to, here's your situation based on the statistics for your town. We think that this building that might be like a pre-K to 2 building is the most beneficial for your town? Will they give specific recommendations as to how we break things up?
No, they won't do that. That will be a result of the feasibility study.
Okay.
That the feasibility study will identify the preferred configuration, not necessarily the best configuration, but the preferred configuration of the community.
Okay. And that comes through the MSBA. It'll be their recommendation.
Nope, it would be the feasibility. It would be the architect and the OPM, along with everybody who's part of the feasibility study. So there'll be all kinds of focus groups, getting feedback from the community as a whole, to find out what the preferences would be.
Okay, thank you. And about what's the time? I'm sorry, you might have already said this, but now I'm like piecing it together in my head, processing it. So what do you have like a vague date for when that piece will be up?
Well,
you said 18 months for.
Yeah, the whole process is intended to be 18 more months. If we're hoping that we can get to be invited into the next phase at the March 2nd meeting.
Okay.
If that happens, we'll already have documents ready ahead of time to get the request for the OPM. And then once we do that, we would have to hire the designer selection, the designer. Once that's done, then we'll start the feasibility process.
Okay, thank you.
So I wouldn't think you'll start any of that before July 1 of this year.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other questions for Dr. Dutch? Okay. Thank you for coming back, Dr. Dutch, and your power back and finishing the presentation. And thank you for putting this together.
Sure, no problem.
So next in the agenda, we have the Assistant Superintendent's report. So I'll turn it over to Ms. Driscoll.
Thank you. So I needed to be allowed to be unmuted. Nice to see everyone this evening. I am going to share something on my screen tonight because I want to give a couple of shout outs to some teachers and department heads and principals who have been taking on some big picture work this year. So this is an image from our professional development committee. And if you're not familiar with our professional development committee, it is a long-standing committee that seems to have has had lots of different renditions over the years. And this year, the team came together to try to establish a process where all stakeholders got involved in communicating what needs to happen for our professional development days. And you can see here, we have an educator survey. Survey goes to the professional development committee. We get input from the central office leadership team, and the template and all the feedback for buildings goes to the district leadership team where they can customize it further. So we've had this cycle of collecting information, providing feedback, and this is something that we've committed to for each professional development day. So I'm going to give you a sample of what some of these things look like. And if you didn't know, our last professional development day was focused on looking at the pair data. And because conversations happened here at the Professional Development Committee, and there was a demonstrated need to make sure that this data was looked at district-wide at the building level with building level teams, they made it happen through this process. So here's a sample of what educators get and principals for the feedback. We have questions that teachers, paraprofessionals, anyone specialized support, anyone who participates in any of the PD day at all gets a link, and they answer several questions. This just happens to be one question that we had. And we share out what it means. We have the strongly agree, the neutral, disagree, strongly agree, strongly disagree. We look at those percentages so that we can really reference and understand how the day went and do it in a quick way so that by the time we get to the next month, we'll be able to make some adjustments if necessary. Something else at the end of every PD survey is all of the, every participant gives an overall rating, and how they give that is in a letter grade. And we just convert that to like an A is a 95, a B is an 85. And then we look at the average. What is the district average of all the feedback from everyone who participated? And as you can see, regardless of, they've been pretty similar, except for December 16th. So December 16th, a part of that rating is we had an outside group come in to do a whole bunch of assemblies for students. And then they were supposed to work with teachers on that same topic. It was supposed to be quite different, but some of the teachers said, wow, that was too similar. It was like I watched this twice. And that was wonderful, quick feedback. And now we know to ask that from that vendor and when we work with them. So that was wonderful. And the district average from the 20th, which I pulled out just this morning, is an 87.3. So I wanted to talk to you about what happened there. So you remember that Greg Ranieri talked about pair last year, I want to say in April, and I think Greg is still here, so I want to give him a shout out for really being the person who pushes this forward through our district. The district team in the past has not had representation from every single building consistently, and this year it has. So I want to also send a shout out to every single person on the district and on the building-based teams, because those do take time. So in order to look at the pair data that was collected, instead of us having one or two people who are the experts in it, we had time to make sure that each building's SED team got to work with their building principal and start diving into that data. The high school and the middle school are much more ahead with this. They did some full staff trainings. And at the elementary schools, they just started with their SED team making a plan for how they will roll it out to the full staff. So that's been wonderful, and sailor shout outs to everybody who is involved in that. So a great piece about this is that now that we have this team established, both at the building based and we have district level conversations, we can start triangulating data. So I think some people were saying, well, if we're just looking at pair, what else are we looking at? What else do we do? So this is just a sample of another piece of data that we have had for years that exists. It's the vocal survey, news of climate and learning. And this is done every year in grades 4, 5, 8, and 10. It's an extra, not required, but it's an extra session, usually when they do math session 2 for MCAS. And we can get this information from the state, and it gives us feedback almost like a percentile ranking of our levels of engagement, safety, and environment, not only at each school, but by student type. They also this year added an element of related to bullying or the existence of it in a building. So the state's coming out with their graphs and additional information, hopefully by the end of this month, and we will share data like this with these teams that are already working on what we need to do for our students to keep them safe, happy, and productive in our schools. So does anybody have any questions? This is definitely a sky view of a whole lot of things that a lot of people are doing.
I don't have any questions, Heidi, but for me, from this level as a school committee member, it just feels like we made so much progress relative to PD and development of our staff. I just want to thank you and your team for the efforts. I mean, just from, looks like we have a more cohesive team that looks at the PD to getting, I'm assuming, I think in the past I had asked how we received feedback on PD, and it was kind of like, I don't know, some paper surveys that folks may or may not respond to. So this is great that you get immediate feedback and can access it and can shift as necessary. But this just seems great, and it just gives me confidence that we're really giving our staff access to the best things out there, and that we have an organized method to deliver all that. So thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And honestly, in being transparent, we are just starting the foundations of what this cycle should be. And we are listening to people for what we'll do for next year. At our next PD meeting, we'll be looking at next year's calendar and talking about that structure ahead of time, because we really, even though this is organized and we have started a cycle of feedback, we want to make sure that we plan a year ahead as much as we can. Any other questions?
I agree with Mr. Gates. I mean, I think it's great that we can hit that. I think it was like 25% that went from either neutral to disagreed with the PD that was done. So being able to get that immediate feedback and prepare not only for the next PD this current year, but also prepare for the next year. I think it's a great tool to be able to help us just give our staff what they need. So thank you for putting this together.
I want to say definitely the PD committee are the ones keeping it going. For example, when we met before this last PD day, we changed a couple of the response questions a little bit so we can make sure we get appropriate information or more meaningful information. So it's still I would say a living process, but it is really driven by that team.
Hi, Mike, I have a question for Heidi. Just a follow up to Peter's comment about the feedback. In looking at that pie chart, there's a small percentage of people who disagreed with that the information supports them. Are you able to follow up with those the people who answered strongly disagree in like kind of just, pull out more information as to why they felt that way? If you found that like you thought they should have agreed, so to speak,
Mhm. So we have been committed, even though it was very scary at first to get this going, to strictly anonymous surveys so that teachers feel comfortable. So we would never go back to that person. But the last blurb, and this isn't something I pulled up here because it's kind of overwhelming to look at. The last, I guess, open area asks teachers specifically why they gave the overall rating that they did. And we also added an additional question to say, what would you like to see happen in the future? What would help your practice? So if somebody gives an overall rating of an F, then of course we would want to read that comment on the end. And I want to say, literally everyone, maybe except 2 people, write a comment to explain, because why wouldn't you? Once in a while, we'll have a person who just leaves a dot because it is a required column. But those comments are all broke. This is a part of what we give to principals. Everybody gets the district pie charts with the information of how it looks at the district. And then underneath, they get a customized Excel sheet with every single rating for each of the questions, and the overall rating for the school, and every single comment for that school. So Cushing would get Cushing's, the high school gets high schools, and they can, not only the principal, but the staff, read those too.
No, that's great, because even if somebody says they strongly disagree, it's really important to know why they felt that way, so we could improve the PD. But thank you very much for putting that together.
My pleasure. Any other questions or?
All right, well, thank you, Ms. Driscoll, for putting that together and sharing that from the PD team. So next on the agenda, we have the leadership report from the Director of Special Education. So I'll turn it over to our Dr. Bokar.
Hi, everybody. Tonight I'm going to speak about the tiered focus monitoring review. So I'm going to try to see if I can share my screen, do a PowerPoint. Okay. All right, everyone see it?
Yes.
I was panicking a few minutes ago because I couldn't I couldn't see the video and everybody was frozen. I'm like, oh no, I hope I'm not following Dr. Dutch's footsteps with technical difficulties this evening. But so thank you for having me. And like I said, I'm going to talk about our tiered focus monitoring review process. It's basically, it's something that we used to call the coordinated program review. They've changed it a little bit to be more focused on certain elements instead of doing like one standard size fits all review. But basically every 3 years, the Department of Education comes out and basically assesses districts for their compliance in certain areas. And it's like planning a wedding. It's quite the ordeal. They typically do like one big review, and then in another 3 years, they would do a smaller review, at least regarding special education. Districts are divided into either Group A or Group B, where Group A, which meant a lot of special education focus, Group B tends to have a little bit more civil rights focus. The purpose of the review is just to analyze compliance with regulations, particularly special education, and particularly Iep timelines, the team process, discipline of special ed students, and child find. So Iep timelines, they're most concerned about initial evaluations because if the annual review was late, students still have a stay put IEP, they're still getting free appropriate public education. But if it's an initial and they haven't gotten services yet, that could be a problem. The team process, they're just making sure that we are including all people required at the team meeting, that we're providing written notice to families and other kinds of things like progress reports, assessments, etc. They come out and look at our discipline specifically regarding special ed students. They also look at over discipline for different racial groups. Child find, that is way back in the 60s when students with special needs weren't allowed to come to school. When they basically made the special ed law, they determined that we have to go out and find those children. So you'll hear that term child find. And as it relates to the review, it is about students that are being referred from early intervention so that they can begin special education by the time that they are 3 years old. The other thing that they look at are in terms of, they give us a rating when we start a review. They look at students with disabilities graduation rates within 5 years and also within 4 years. They look at any PRS, which is problem resolution system complaints. They look at the indicators, which I'll explain in the next slide. They look at significant disproportionality, and they also review compliance with civil rights and Office of Language Acquisition. So I have a little, oops, sorry about that. I have a little kind of a cheat sheet. It really is kind of like alphabet soup. So the TFM is the Tiered Focus Monitoring Review that replaces the formerly called CPR, Coordinated Program Review. PSM is the Office of Public School Monitoring. PRS is the Problem Resolution System. That used to be called the PQA. SWD is Students with Disabilities. OLA is the Office of Language Acquisition. That is relating to English language learners, also called ELL. Significant disproportionality, that's when a district over-identifies students from a certain minority group as compared to white students in the area of discipline, identification as a special ed student in general, or as a particular disability category, or in placement. The three big indicators that we had to look at this year were indicator 11. Those are those initial evaluation timelines. DESE wants to make sure that every district is completing evaluations within 30 days from signed parental consent, and that we're having the meeting within 45 days to determine eligibility for special ed. Indicator 12, that's that child find that I just mentioned, transitioning from EI to special ed. Indicator 13, that's about transitioning from the high school to adult services, particularly focused on students beginning at age 14, so that we are preparing our students to graduate or to move on to other adult living. And as part of that, there's something called a TPF, a transition planning form. More key terminology. So you've probably heard of the term FAPE, free appropriate public education. Related to this TFM is corrective action plan, also called CAP. SE is special education, and CR is civil rights. So you can see this little triangle here. They have these 4 tiers that they place districts in, and that is going to be for the next 3 years of this cycle for our tiered focus monitoring review. We were actually placed in tier 3, which is corrective action. I was a little surprised, honestly, because I would have thought it would have been tier 2. We are going to be kind of looking into that a little bit more. Part of that is based on some of the things that have happened in the last 4 years, including our significant disproportionality and including our graduation rate with our disabilities, as well as the results of the self-assessment that I did. So these, I'm not going to go over all these because it's overwhelming just to look at, but these are actually all of the standards that we had to self-assess this year. So you can see all the special ed here. Really, what is it, 40, almost 49. They kind of skip a few here. And then civil rights, there were 3 standards. So for all of those standards there, we had to either upload documents and evidence or statements or kind of protocols and policies related to how Scituate complies with these aspects. So that was our self-assessment, which I did in the spring of 2021. Okay, I'm also getting a little message that as part of that, they did the OLA and the Castaneda test as well. I'm more familiar with the special ed piece. I know that last year, the previous assistant superintendent did the civil rights and the OLA part. But this is kind of because I'm a special ed director and I am the TFM coordinator, but I'm a little bit more focused on the special ed piece. So last year, as part of the self-assessment, we uploaded policies and procedures and documents relating to special ed and related to civil rights and English language learners. We reviewed 41 cases for the indicator 11. And again, that was the indicator relating to the initial eligibility. Unfortunately, we only had 73% of the cases that I reviewed fully met all the criteria for timelines or documentation of parent consent. I think that what happened was coming off of the pandemic with not being able to assess students in 2020, in the spring of 2020, that kind of carried over into the fall of 2021, which is where I took that data from with some absences of key people, and then as well as quarantines and in the beginning working remotely. It was a challenge to make sure that we met within the timelines. I'm going to talk a little bit more about indicator 11, but just know that we only met 73%. For indicator 12, that was the students coming from early intervention. We were 100% compliant. It was only one case, but that's okay. The IEP was a little bit late, but it was with parent consent, so they gave us that one. And then I reviewed 35 cases for compliance with indicator 13. And again, that is the indicator regarding students age 14 and over. And we had 86% of the cases that I looked at fully met criteria. In addition, I reviewed 15 student files for compliance with other regulations in 7 focus areas, particularly around team process, assessments, out-of-district placements, and primary language. So as I said, it's like planning a wedding. It was quite a lot of work, the self-assessment. For the findings, as I mentioned, for indicator 11, we were only 73% compliant, but most that were late were only 1 or 2 days late. One case was 10 days late, but the student was not found eligible, so that did not prevent him or her receiving services. And as I mentioned, the shutdown and the quarantines, it really did impact these results. And unfortunately, when we had our 2-week shutdown at the high school or any kind of quarantines of students, DESE did not accept those reasons unless we had signed consent from parents waiving the timelines. So those are kind of understandable numbers given what we've been going through. We will definitely do better. Indicator 13, some of the key issues there where we didn't always put the student age 14 and over on the attendance sheet. Our transition planning forms, those TPFs, did not always have new dates, so it was unclear whether those were updated or not. And an adult representative from Mass Rehab, et cetera, was not always invited, was not always on the attendance sheet. Again, it was, kind of difficult. We were running meetings remotely last fall, but that's what I found. And in terms of some of the root cause analysis, there was an error with Aspen where it was counting the days wrong, and there was also a human error. So we have fixed that. I think that also contributed to some of those cases being late. I did a deep dive into the data, into those cases that I looked at that were not 100% compliant. And in most cases, they self-corrected. So what that meant was this past fall, I looked at them again and they had already had the meetings and they had the student that was age 14 and over. So I think that for the most part, there was no violation of FAPE, which is good. So it is an ongoing process. We did the self-assessment in the spring. We submitted we've had a couple meetings, the assistant superintendent and I, with Desi. One of our contact person has left. We have a new person working with her. I created corrective action plans. I submitted progress reports on those already, and then I still need to do some more data that I will submit by March. As I mentioned, we were placed in tier 4. The good news is we did not have any findings of significant disproportionality this year, which was based on last year's data, but we had it for 3 years prior. So I think that was included as part of this rating. We had no concerns of discipline or PRS complaints that were found since I've been here anyway. So it was not an issue. Oh, sorry. We're tier 3. Sorry, not tier 4. That was a mistake. Thanks, Heidi. But we change that. But we did have some concerns regarding graduation rates with students with disabilities. So students that have disabilities are eligible for special education until they graduate or turn 22 years old. And our 5-year numbers, students in the 5-year that should have graduated, I believe within 5 years of 2019, were a little bit lower, but our 4-year graduation rates were higher. So that 5-year will look better. I don't know if that's making sense, but basically, if in 2019, the 5-year graduation rate was 68%, and in 2020, the 4-year graduation rate was 78%. So the 5-year is going to be much better. And I think there was a bubble of students that the school teams or the parents recommended additional time beyond their graduation. Some of them had met the criteria for graduation, but they were getting additional time. And unfortunately, that does impact our graduation rate. Some of the other things that we've done is we've created a publicity release regarding the process of the tiered focus monitoring. And we have, and the site visit that went out in January of 2022. Our site visit is going to be March 1st. And we sent, Desi sent out the survey to all parents of special education students at the end of October 2021. It was actually during those 3 days that there was no power. I had one parent that was asking if it was kind of a spam or what was it, but it is legit, and they will keep sending it out with reminders until parents fill out the survey. So if you've gotten it, please fill it out if you do not mind. We will be hosting a parent orientation meeting via Zoom during our next CPAC meeting. I sent out an email today to all parents with the link. That will be February 9th at 6. Winnie Coco is our DESE representative that will be presenting at that time. As I mentioned, we will have a site visit from Winnie on March 1st. During that time, she will be looking at special ed records, including some of the records that I reviewed for verification processing, as well as additional records. And she will be viewing our timeout room. Then the following day on March 2nd, she will be doing interviews, including an exit interview with the superintendent. That will be on March 2nd. And then I think it's kind of funny because their timelines are that they're supposed to issue a draft report 45 days later, followed by a final report 60 days later from the site visit. But last time when they came out, it was, I think they came out in January 3rd, 2019, and they didn't give the report until like April 2019. But at any rate, it is an ongoing process because the department doesn't accept anything less than 100% compliance, even though, you know, we're human and people make mistakes and sometimes things are late. They only accept 100% absolute compliance. So when they come out, I'm sure there'll be other things that they will find, and then we'll have to continue to like work on those and hopefully move up from tier 3 to tier 2 and maybe tier 1 and you know, keep working on these. You know, one of the things that I think that, and I've kind of talked to the department about this, I participated in a focus group a while ago about it, is, you know, where is the quality of the work that our teams are doing? Because the teachers, the staff, the administrators here are really good, and I feel like we do have good programs and we're doing a nice job, but we do get judged a lot on paperwork and timelines. And so even though that is important, the relationship and the outcomes for students are more important. So we'll do our best to keep working on this, and that's it. I'm sure you'll have another kind of an update. Like I said, I'm not as involved with the Office of Language Acquisition or with the civil rights, but Heidi does that part with the civil rights and oversees the OLA, and that will also be part of this. OLA, I believe, is coming out later than our March 1st, but that will all be, we will be getting reports on that as well. So I'm going to stop sharing, and I am open for questions.
And before I open it up, I do want to say, Dr. Bovard, this is probably a level of detail we haven't seen, at least in the 10 years I've been on the school committee. So, I mean, I know it was dense, but thank you for sharing.
Thank you. I hope it wasn't too much.
No, it's great, because at least we can, you know, see a lot of the hard work that's being done, and, you know, really all the things that we're held accountable to. So I'll open up. Are there any questions from the committee?
Yeah, I guess this is, Dr. Boba, I'm going to show my ignorance that this is not an area that I am that familiar with. And so given all of the level of detail and I was trying to follow, I would love to hear from you as you present to the school committee. What are the things you want us to take away from this presentation? Like, what are your like top, you know, key things if I walk away with what would you like me to remember from this presentation?
Good question. I think that, you know, it is important to understand how what the department is looking at. You know, I've seen some progress even since I started, certainly with the significant disproportionality. We were over-identifying Black students as having a communication disability. That was then found like we weren't. But sometimes the data is based on small numbers. So, you know, we were 100% compliant with one student, with one case, because that was the one that fell within the data set with our students that were over-identified as communication disability. That was 6 students. So sometimes, you know, we need to be careful. We need to track the trends, but also, you know, continue to do the good work that we're doing. And that, you know, the timelines do matter because we don't want to violate anyone's legal rights. Documentation is important. I think that when COVID hit, a lot of people were working remotely and we didn't always maybe get the documentation into the student files. And that's another thing that I've been working on, because in many of those cases, it might have been okay with the parents that the meeting might have been delayed, but without that evidence, I was very honest and I just said, I don't see the evidence. So, you know, we're working on making sure that we get all that data. I think that it's important to like just know what goes into it, because they will be writing a final report. It is a published report, And hopefully it will be fairly positive, because I really do think that we have good services here and really good staff that are implementing all the services.
Thank you.
I have,
Dr. Weber, that was actually one of the questions that I had. So just as a follow-up to what Dr. Rakowski had said, do we have like a standard checklist that our staff should be following, or is there some kind of automated, do step 1, then step 2, then step 3 if it's required to make sure that we don't miss some of those things in the future? It seemed like you said, it was a lot of little things that, added up and might have caused us to go from tier 2 to tier 3.
Well, I think that with the initial evaluations, like we do have some checks and balances, and we do have people working on that for whatever. So it just seems silly, but you would think if you have 30 working days from the date of the parental consent to do the evaluation and 45 days to do the meeting, that it would start the day after you get the parental consent, because we could get that 4:30 on a Friday. And it's, when I'm talking days, I'm talking school days, but it starts that day that you get it. So it was like, a lot of them were like one day off. So the checks and balances are with the school calendar, with Aspen, with the administrative assistant that handles that. So we're doing like human checking and computer checking for the timelines. We did institute like a checklist of forms and paperwork that I want after every, IEP meeting. So in the past that didn't happen. So this is like, so the special ed liaison knows what to include in the packet. And I'm working on centralizing the student files. So when I first got here, each school had their own special files. And so it was harder to keep track and monitor. So now all the elementary student special ed files are kept in Jenkins. And we'll also be moving the high school to a place in the middle school so that we're better able to monitor and make sure that all those pieces go in. So like, that's one example of just trying to checks and balances. Does that answer your question, or was there another piece to your question?
Nope, that answers it. Thank you. Sorry, Peter, I know I cut you off.
no, good. This is great stuff. And I love this stuff, and I live it, so I understand a very, very small amount of it. But I guess it's a couple of generic questions. And I know you said there was just one case, age 3. So do we receive the notification or the referral from early intervention on that? I'm just curious how that works, and I'm glad that we were able to meet. I'm just curious about that process.
Right.
So it's great that we were able to meet. I'm curious how it all worked, because if we didn't satisfy that, that would be concerning for sure. It just means something, maybe they're not providing us the data. And then the other question is, I believe this is all self-assessment, correct? The findings?
So the indicators and the some of that was self-assessment, but the tier, and I'm very honest, so I was like, like I did it randomly. I didn't pick like, oh, I'm gonna get my best case. Like I just picked cases. Yeah. But the other pieces were the PRS complaints, which I said, I'm not aware of any founded complaints since I've been here, but there might have been some previously. The students with disabilities graduation rate, that was included. Discipline, I'm not aware of that being a problem for special ed at all. And what was the other one? But maybe most of it is the self-assessment, or I don't know what degree. I know the assistant superintendent was trying to work with DESE to kind of get a little bit more information about what exactly this was rated in.
Okay. And the last question to follow up is, did this also includes out of district placements, correct?
Yes.
Because the district owns those IEPs, so those are part of the sample size.
Yes. So some of that had to do with the students 14 and over, not the initial evaluations. But to answer your question about preschool, we have a wonderful early childhood coordinator who does keep track. Early intervention will publish a list. And sometimes they will just have like the birth dates. They don't give us the names unless the parents provide consent, and they might give us the disability if it's known to them. So they can give us that like a year in advance, sometimes more, but they can't make the referral until the parents sign the consent. And so sometimes that can be a little late and they're trying to play catch up. But if it was like within 60 days, then the state would not fault us on that. That happened in my prior district because, you know, you need time to do that. But I know a lot of parents probably weren't really accessing early intervention. My own grandson was not, you know,
Right.
I mean, they were like, it was all remote.
Yep.
So his mother had to follow him around the house with the computer for the early intervention. So, you know, so there's many reasons why, you know, you might not get it, but the state gave us like a certain time frame. And if the student was, you know, turning 3 within that time frame or referred within that time frame, that was the data that we had to pick up. We are getting a lot of preschool referrals this year, however. So, but like I said, we have a really good early childhood team who's like on track for that.
Okay, good. No, it sounds, again, like Mr. Long said, we had never really been provided this level of detail. I think a lot of it, it is dense, as Mike said, but I think it's really helpful. And again, for those just, you know, watching or now or on the recording, there's a lot that goes on in all aspects of running a school. And this is one of them that does require a lot of time from you and as administrator and our staff as well. So I think that helps it go less unnoticed, I should say. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
And I would agree with Peter and what he just said too. And obviously, you know, appreciating your honesty about the data and, you know, it is what it is. Obviously pandemic plays a huge role into things from every direction. And, you know, you take the data and then you just, like you said, you know, you move forward and you make changes and improvements. And I as a special educator, I definitely understand the paper, the very, you know, the minutia that goes into some of it. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's to protect kids and make sure they get the services they're deserved. So as long as, you know, you can understand late paperwork and this and that, but as a district, as long as we're providing students with the services they are due, I think that's obviously the main point. And I think that's what you had already said too. Just, you know, kids are getting services and that's what matters.
Yeah, thank you. Agreed.
And then the only other question that I had is look like the past couple of years and then going forward, do we see a lot of expectation changes or, you know, changes coming in from DESE, or is that one of those things that it's going to be a pretty much a standard for this kind of evaluation that we need to follow? And the only reason I ask is, you know, as we move forward, are there things we should be anticipating to make sure that we, you know, hit those benchmarks as they come out, as opposed to, you know, having to be reactive to them?
Right. So they tend to focus on different things at different times because I've been doing coordinated program review for like 15 years now. And it seemed like every other time like they're looking for something different. So sometimes they focus on, I didn't even show you the other standards, like those were the universal standards, then they have targeted standards. So depending on your data and those other indicators, they might be focused on other kinds of things, like making sure, you know, we don't have all special education classrooms grouped together, because then that would be segregating our students with disabilities. They want them, you know, interspersed throughout the building. I know that they've been concerned about, you know, physical restraints and timeout. So looking at the timeout room, that's a new thing this year that they haven't done before, because I did the TFM in Nantucket a few years ago, and that wasn't on their list. So there's a few things, but like most of the regulations don't really change. It's just how the interpretation is of the regulations, and the timelines are the same. And, you know, it doesn't matter if there's a pandemic, the timelines are the timelines. It's just how to, you know, implement that. So yeah, they'll probably change things a little bit. And then of course, OLA has changed a little bit. They seem to be in the last 5 years a little bit more focused on civil rights than they were, you know, 10 years ago. But they, you know, they give us all the support and the documents, and assistant superintendent's been great to work with as well. So we'll be okay.
No, that helps. Thank you.
Just another question. Do you feel like the district is, we have a handle on evals and, not that that's getting done and there's not, testing's not overwhelming or?
Well, it was last fall, so the fall of 2020, because when the students were home for the spring, and even though they started, the evals weren't able to be done remotely in the spring, and then they had like double to make up in the fall. And then we also had some absences of key people, whether it be, FMLAs or whatever. And so it was, and then not all the students were attending like full 5 days. So this year, I'm very comfortable with how things are this year, but last year it was kind of making up for those spring and still trying to keep within the new ones. So yeah, I think we have a really good team. We have good team chairs and excellent psychologists. And I was also, we upgraded to the Wyatt 4 and doing some more, manual, doing some scoring with the computer, which is also helpful for teachers and psychologists when they're doing their evals. So we're making some improvements with technology as well.
Great. If there's no other questions, thank you again for the presentation tonight.
And thanks. And so we're in tier 3, not 4. Sorry about that mistake.
Okay, so next on the agenda is our one opportunity for public comment. So if people want to raise their hand using the Zoom option, I can call on you. And then if people can just state their name and either school affiliation or address for the record, would be appreciated. So the first person is Michelle Kramer.
Hi, my name is Michelle Kramer. I am the mother of a kindergarten student at Wampatuck, and I'm on Pyramid Lane in Scituate. So I'd like to address the board regarding the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. event held last week. While I am in complete support of this event and many more to come, there was content which has left myself and many others in the community concerned. When broadcasting an event for students K-12, the content must be appropriate for the elementary school students first and foremost. During the celebration, there was content I would categorize as violent, sexually charged, and divisive. While I appreciate the superintendent's apology, it doesn't address the content that was inappropriate for all audiences, including the comments related to women and the demonization of our law enforcement community. If we are truly building a community of diversity, inclusion, and trust, there should never be an instance when a particular group is isolated, especially the men and women of our law enforcement community. The lack of respect for our officers was disappointing and shameful. And in all honesty, a public apology to our law enforcement officers is necessary. While I commend everyone for being vulnerable and contributing to the celebration, the lack of awareness leaves me questioning the judgment of the people responsible for the celebration. And more so has me questioning the content of the current academic curriculum. There needs to be more transparency, community engagement, and school board involvement when deciding upon and implementing future DEI events, initiatives, and curriculum. There also needs to be a level of accountability of those who prepared the celebration. In addition, the full unredacted video honestly needs to be available for parents to review as the community is talking and are filling in the blanks themselves. We as parents and the community expect better, and we can do better. The school board and the public school leadership need to do more to make this right, as these messages are not loving, are not inclusive, and absolutely do not build a community of trust. Thank you.
Thank you for expressing your concerns. And I mean, if you do want to have a conversation about it, I do recommend reaching out to the appropriate individuals, and I know they'll be more than happy to do that. So seeing no other hands raised, I'm going to move on in the agenda. Next up, we have the acceptance of gift. So I'll turn it over to Principal Raven from the Wampatuck School.
Hi, can you hear me?
You can.
Hi, so Tracy Reardon, Principal at Wampatuck.
So we were given a gift from a community member. They donated a box of office supplies and school supplies, and also a clarinet. And so we have given the clarinet, I have given the clarinet to Susie De Silva and asked her to give it to a student who could use it. And then all of the office supplies we were able to distribute to teachers and students in the building. And that's it.
Great, thank you for providing that detail. And if there are no questions from the committee, I'll entertain a motion on the gift.
I'll make a motion that the school committee accept the donation from Mr. Joseph Brescia to Wampatuck School with great appreciation.
I'll second that.
Thank you. So do a roll call vote. Mr. Gates?
Yes.
Ms. Lindblom?
Yes.
Ms. Brandolini?
Yes.
Dr. Borkowski?
Yes.
And Long, yes. Thank you, Principal Reardon, and please express our thanks to the individual who donated. So next we have the approval of minutes. We have the minutes from our January 10th, 2022 meeting in the backup. So if there are no questions on those minutes, I'll entertain a motion on that as well.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes of the January 10th, 2022 minutes as presented.
I'll second.
Thank you. Mr. Gates?
Yes.
Long, yes. Ms. Lindblom?
Yes.
Ms. Brandolini?
Yes.
And Dr. Borkowski?
Yes.
Thank you. So there's no correspondence in the backup. So at this point, we do have a warrant. So I'll turn it back over to Dr. Dutch.
Thank you. We do have one warrant, S220113, total amount of $231,583.14 out of our revolving account for the IDEA grant, $122,831.87 for transportation. Out of our local LEA, our local funds, our gas utility bill, $34,864.77. Contracted services for heat, for repairing heating system, $38,790.49. And those are the only large bills this month. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Dutch. Are there any questions on the warrant from the committee? Okay, thank you again, Dr. Dutch. So next on the agenda, we have other business. Is there anything that the committee wanted to bring up at this time? Okay. Seeing none. So our next scheduled meeting is February 7th, and we have the budget workshop on February 12th and the public budget hearing on February 17th, all via Zoom. Scituate High School will be the next Celebrate Student Learning. We'll have the State of the District update from Superintendent Burkhead, as well as in February, we'll have the kindergarten registration update and the first look at the 2022-2023 school calendar. If there is anything else that people want to put on the agenda, just reach out to Superintendent Burkhead and I will make sure that that gets reviewed. So if there's nothing else, I'll entertain a motion to end the meeting at 8:08 p.m.
So moved.
Second.
Long, yes. Mr. Gates?
Yes.
Ms. Lindblom?
Yes.
Dr. Borkowski?
Yes.
And Ms. Brandolini?
Yes.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a great rest of your night.
Thanks, Mike.